on both sides of the ball. You see here their offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, is now the head coach of the Raiders. Star running back Kenneth Walker, who was Super Bowl MVP, now plays for the Chiefs. You see their assistant GM is now the GM of the Minnesota Vikings, Nolan Teasley. So they have a lot to address this off, or they had a lot to address this off season. But you know, they figured out who they needed to keep and who they wanted to build around. And Sam Darnold is going to be the quarterback there again, Mina. He had success in his first year, obviously, in Seattle. It went well for him, went well for them. But with all these changes and a new coordinator, what's the most important thing he needs to do to continue his progression there?
Yeah, I think for Brian Fleury, the new offensive coordinator, the job is something that Clint Kubiak did his best at, but at times it was a little bit up and down in terms of Seattle's offense, and that's keeping Sam Darnold out of 3rd and long. Obviously, that's true of any quarterback. It's harder on 3rd and long, but especially true for Darnold, who on 1st down was a top 10 quarterback in QBR, 8th league-wide. But then on 3rd down, not just 3rd long, he dropped to 26, which was the biggest delta of any quarterback outside of Cam Ward league-wide. And there's plenty of reasons for that. You know, the Seahawks offense, pretty play-action-centric, which is obviously easier on early downs. Darnold himself has always been somewhat inconsistent against pressure, which is likely to increase again as the downs go on. But I think for Coach Fleury, finding a balance between efficiency and explosiveness on 1st and 2nd down is so important to getting the most out of Sam Darnold. And that starts with the run game as well, which is going to look pretty different with Jerry and Price.
Normally, I would laugh at a nobody believes in us, I have a chip on my shoulder gimmick from a Super Bowl champion. In this case, it is incredibly valid. The Seahawks are on the short list for most disrespected Super Bowl champions of my lifetime. I think the Eli Giants are on that list twice. I think that the Von Miller, Peyton Manning Broncos are on that list. But it feels like the day after the Super Bowl, we started a new conversation about everybody but the Seahawks. And we've glossed over the fact that in the Super Bowl, they had a 50% pressure rate on Drake May, that they hit the ball carrier in the backfield over half the time. One of the best postseason performances in both regards in the history of the NFL. Last year, regular season, 2nd best pass defense per play in the NFL the entire season. Defense, best at limiting explosive plays on the ground. They're an unbelievable team. They didn't lose that much. And the fact that we just moved on from them and started talking about the Rams and all these teams we're going to talk about later is disrespectful to everybody. Having said that, I'm picking the Rams to win the NFC.
It's going to be hard to move on from Seattle because they're going to be just fine offensively. I did make some calls before I came to the show, a little bit of intel on Seattle. More motions and shifts in the offense. They will have that with Brian Fleury. I'm told that Sam Darnold's really comfortable with that. Rashid Shaheed, we know he's fast. Yeah. He had a major spring, I was told. He and Sam Darnold hitting it off. They're going to give him more. Some of those routes you saw that Jackson Smith and J-Bo was running so well last year, he'll still do this, but they're going to give more short to intermediate stuff too to Rashid Shaheed. He's going to be a big-time player for them. They feel comfortable. Those tight ends are going to be moving all around with the motion that they're going to be doing.
That's the thing. We talk about who they lost, but they made a point to keep certain guys, Rashid Shaheed among them. Seahawks veterans report to training camp exactly 4 weeks from today on July 24th. That just feels sooner than I expected it to. Let's get to some top stories around the NFL as we get closer to training camp. Jeremy, what do you got in that notebook?
Let's start with Brandon Ayuk, who will probably post an IG story at some point in the next 20 or 30 seconds as I'm posting this here, but he has not applied for reinstatement because he's on the left squad list for the 49ers. He has to send a formal letter to Commissioner Goodell. Hasn't happened as far as I know. Hasn't got any clarity as to when he's going to be cut or traded, released, whatever, but teams consider him untradeable at this point. So he wants to go to Washington. That's clear. I'm told the Commanders are going to wait to sign any receiver. Bijan Robinson, he's going to be the next name most likely to crack the bank at running back. The Atlanta Falcons are paying players right now. Drake London paid. Kyle Pitts paid. Robinson, they hope to pay. They're motivated. No deal imminent yet, but they have been talking. Watch for Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, too. There's going to be some major money spent for guys who could be making over $20 million per year in that market when it's all said and done. And then finally, you have quarterbacks getting healthy. You see Bo Nix there. Several guys were beat up this spring, coming back from injuries. Daniel Jones, you see him on the Achilles tear. I'm told he expects to be doing 11-man work when they get back to camp. Bo Nix, Denver expects him to be full go when they get back to camp in late July. You see Patrick Mahomes, that's a little more fluid just because of the severity of that injury, but They are leaning into him potentially playing week 1. He's progressed really well, so I wouldn't put anything past him as far as what he can handle when they report to camp.
Mahomes would like to get the Chiefs back to the Super Bowl. Of course, the last time they played in the Super Bowl, they lost to the Eagles, and who had a monster defense at that point. They've changed a lot on the defensive side of the ball, have the Eagles, since that time. And since last season ended, in fact, Jaylen Phillips and Nakobe Dean are gone. They traded for pass rusher Jonathan Grenard. So a little turnover there on that side of the ball, but all-pro linebacker Zach Bond is still there, and he recently spoke about his expectations for Vic Fangio's new-look defense as they head into 2026.
I feel like he's taking things to the next level this year in terms of he knows we're comfortable, and we know our scheme, and what he knows us, and he knows what we're capable of. Even within his own scheme, he continues to develop and tweak and change, and that's what Vic is. He's a hard-nosed, old-school football coach that if you're willing to learn and listen to what he has to say, it could be really good for you, and I think it's been really good for this defense.
Kevin, we've talked so much this offseason about the Eagles' offense.
Yep.
A.J. Brown getting traded, is Jalen Hurts on the hot seat, et cetera, et cetera. Not much focus on the defense. Do you agree with what Zach Bond had to say about it?
Absolutely. They're one of the highest floor units in the entire league. Bond himself, one of the most productive off-ball linebackers there is in this league. Quinyon Mitchell, one of the best cornerbacks, period. Last year, best separation from receivers in all of football, lowest catch rate for receivers in all of football when he was the closest defender. So you're seeing Vic Fangio, who, by the way, invented modern defense. He's still there with a bunch of talented guys. The one guy I'd like to see a little more from, Jalen Carter last year. He had a career low in double teams faced, and yet had a career low in getting to the quarterback. I'd like to see a little more from him in a huge year, obviously. It is a high floor unit. We talk about the offense because they're so high variable, but this defense has to be good for them to compete.
I'm super high on the Eagles defense being as good as they were last season. I think it's going to be important too, because with so many changes on offense, it might take a little bit of time, right, for the new offense with Sean Mannion as the coordinator to click, and the defense can hold them up during that period early in the season. The biggest weakness last year on the Eagles defense was that second cornerback position. They addressed it, adding Tariq Woolen, who I think is going to get his hands on a lot of footballs. The loss of Jaylen Phillips, I know they wanted to re-sign him after trading for him. That's a big deal, but I do think Jonathan Grenard is a comparable player. And then one player who I'm really interested in watching this season and optimistic about is Jihad Campbell, who was their first-round draft pick last year. He didn't get to play a lot because Nakobe Dean took so many reps as a starter there. But when he did play, I think you saw flashes of why he went in the first round. The athleticism, the coverage ability, the playmaking. And that's a position where more often than not, it does take a second for things to really click in the NFL because it's so challenging. So if he can take that leap next to Zach Bond, I do think this has the makings yet again of another elite Eagles defense under Vic Fangio.
Mina, the Eagles can make a compelling case that they have the league's best duo at two different positions. Defensive tackle, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. They were dominant last year. Although Carter, they want to see him do it more consistently. Cornerback, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. So when you have that, it's hard to be bad. Like, they're going to be in a position where they can carry this team early in the season. Remember, this is an offense in transition with Sean Mannion, new coordinator. They're going to be doing more play action under center work. Could take them a little time to get their stride. So they're going to rely on Carter and that defense. Speaking of Carter, he's eligible for a contract extension right now. We